Hello, how are you doing today?
Hi. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You're in France, so what time is it there?
It is 9:15 here, so it's not 3 a.m., thank God, but
It's like, oh, I wonder what time it's going to be in France when she comes on for this. I'm so excited to get to talk to you about the piece that you produced for the upcoming exhibition Efímero, which opens on October the 4th. And
Mhm.
of course, we'll be on Artsy from October 1st until January. But you've been a great addition to our online residency program. I've really enjoyed watching your work develop and everything. So um, I am curious. You're based in Denver, Colorado,
Yeah.
um, and you have a studio there. Where's your studio in Denver?
It's at a residency called Red Line Contemporary Art Center. It's downtown, in the Five Points area of Denver.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, for some reason, I thought it was outside of the city, like Golden or something like that. It's like
I wish.
I, I was in like Chicago. People were like, "Oh, yeah, I'm from Chicago," and they'd be like from, like Decatur, Illinois, which is like 3 hours away or something like that. It's always a big running joke that people are like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm living in the urban center of the city." Um, so I'd love to talk to you about your piece that you produced for the show and get a little bit more insight into the background of the symbolism and things and what your work is about. I know that you're working within cultural context of personal history, family history. So let's start with that. Let's talk a little bit about the history, the context of the work that you're producing.
Yeah, so I originally grew up in the South, mostly New Orleans, Columbus, Georgia, kind of all over the place in the South. And most of my work is paying homage to that, but also critiquing uh, types of consumerism, especially that deal with consuming so many aspects of the South in different ways, and regurgitating it and not really elevating all of the creativity and the beauty that exists, more so kind of making fun of it, actually. So I try to elevate it and try to celebrate it while also talking about some of the issues that exist. But this piece in particular, Tchoupitoulas, is based off of my kind of feelings towards gender norms and how, as I've gotten older, as a black woman, I've started to embrace all of the things I was always told to not do as like a Southern lady, as like uh, a Southern belle, where I should be demure, I should be quiet, I should have a certain voice, I shouldn't present myself as masculine, shouldn't be doing any of the things that I always did growing up. I was like a tomboy, and I was someone who loved video games. I was someone who loved being outside doing sports, skateboarding, boxing. I have a deeper voice, like all these different things. I uh, I tried to hide from myself a lot growing up, um, and I tried to mix that with the Southern tradition of celebrating Mardi Gras, where there are some like kind of bad stereotypes that have existed, not really in the South, but outside of the South, where people think Mardi Gras is like an excuse to see certain parts of the female body in order to collect beads. Like you're supposed to present your breasts to the world in order to collect a certain amount of beads, and it's like something that you should be proud of. You should be sexualizing yourself. You should be always focusing on the male gaze no matter what. So you have to focus on being so demure, being so feminine, but also being sexualized at the same time and just offering yourself all the time to the male gaze. So this piece is about taking back the fact that like it doesn't matter what how you are, how you present yourself as a black woman. You are whoever you want to be. You're a black woman, you're strong. So I wanted to make like this kind of badass female character, like that is just holding like an actual rooster that's beaded, like a Mardi Gras parade and Mardi Gras beads representing that part of the South. And she just there's like a little hint of cleavage. There's like a little a little bit of sexuality, but it's her own. And she's deciding like to show a little bit of it. And that's like the main thing with this piece.
And there's also a sense of masculinity, not just from the short haircut of the female figure, but there's this energy of like ownership within the figure itself. Like it has a very self-aware, masculine dominance sort of to it as well. And the symbolism of holding the rooster, the cock.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that out loud, but yeah, that's what it's about.
You know, it's a strong image, just visually. It's extremely striking, and you did some things within the materiality of the piece, like the beading, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that, and also the use of like a, I don't know if it's a wallpaper sort of pattern in the blouse itself, but let's talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
You bead a lot in your work. Where did that come from, and what is your purpose behind that? Where are you pushing that to?
The beading is actually it's relatively new. I've only done it on this is my second piece actually, beading anything. And I've always been a mixed media artist where I've always just focused when I say mixed media, I mean like all 2D medium where I've been drawing my entire life, but I've always just like been the kid that would pick up markers and then pick up like color pencils and kind of mix them together. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten kind of bored with using like only 2D medium to be mixed media. So I was trying to think of different ways, like different materials that I can use in order to convey these themes that I have in my work that mixed well with 2D medium. So I just started collecting beads. And I think that might come from the fact that my residency, my current studio residency, I'm right next door to a beautiful indigenous woman that does beadwork. So I would see her like amazing glass beads, and I would keep being reminded of all the Mardi Gras beads that I still have in giant bins at my parents' house and like my family's house, because we've been to so many Mardi Gras celebrations, and just the idea of celebrating so much, especially in New Orleans, like that's like a part of who you are as a person. You're celebrating all the time. You're always dancing. You're always singing as a person. It's something you're taught to do. So beads are naturally kind of like entwined with that. So I started adding them to my work very recently. And with beads, I also started adding other 3D elements. Even though paper is not necessarily 3D, I started doing collage work because I felt like I didn't need to draw everything I wanted to convey instead of drawing fabric. But I also hate drawing fabric. Just to put that out there, I hate. It's just something I agree with myself. Like I don't like drawing fabric, so it's kind of a way for me to get away from that. I would rather just find like an interesting material, and sometimes paper. I collect paper, and in this case, the paper that's I used for Tchoupitoulas is just like a really cool kind of like cotton paper that I found, which I collect a lot of them, and decided to make her shirt that because it just looks like kind of like a men's shirt to me, like a men's collared shirt that you would find, like the kind of typical checkerboard or houndstooth or whatever. It's kind of like in between those two. I just thought it was like a masculine print, so I used that for the t-shirt, so that it was kind of a mixture of 2D and 3D, and there's all these different places for your eyes to go.
Yeah, and then I mean, like the rooster itself pops. You know, I mean, it really has a presence with that sort of reflective quality of the beads. You've layered underneath the beads as well, so there's some effect of the paint underneath the glass beads that comes through. I can't wait to see it in person. But that graphicness of the shirt creates this sort of like plane of existence. You know, it's like this area where you could sort of fall into it outside of the overall composition. What is the symbolism of the leaves that are coming up from behind? Because it looks sort of like a like a crown or like a, you know, like a dress that you would see on Queen Victoria, you know, with this high collar or something.
The symbolism is exactly that. I wanted her to look royal. I wanted her to look regal. But I also wanted it to be like a play on that, where I try to think of like the most southern thing I could possibly think of. And every time I think of that, I think of collard greens because that's just like something I've always grown up eating. My parents have always grown large crops of collard greens. Um, and they're like this beautiful when you see them in the ground, they're this giant thing. Like they're not small, they're huge. To the point where you can pick up a leaf and it actually does. I used to do that when I was a kid. I used to like put it kind of like I used to peacock with it. And the leaves themselves, they're really beautifully kind of like patinaed. They have like a sheen to them, and it actually looks like all these different colors like you see in the piece. But I really wanted her to just be a peacock. I wanted her to be like a beautiful, like kind of masculine figure that is peacocking. Um, so all of those elements are kind of there, but I use collard greens a lot in my work for that reason, where they're just such an important part of Southern Black culture. Um, that is
Can
not
you
really.
talk, what, can you talk a little bit about the food, the aspect of food in your work? Because food plays a huge role in what your family history culturally, but within the work that you're producing as well.
That is huge, yeah. Most of my work is based off of Southern food. Like I feel like everything I've talked about is you can just look at Southern food. If you look at the history behind each dish or like why it exists or why certain things are eaten certain places, there's so much of that just laced in there naturally. Where Tchoupitoulas, that sounds like a made-up word to most people. It's a street in New Orleans that's right on the side of the Mississippi River. It's like the closest street to the Mississippi River. And there's a really famous dish that is eaten in New Orleans called poulet chapatoulas. So it's like chicken, collard greens, usually a bread pudding that kind of makes everything cohesive. But I wanted to have a play on the food plus all of the things that we're talking about. And I want to highlight Southern food, especially in my work, because Southern food is something that has never been elevated. It's something that's never been highlighted in
Mm.
the same realm as other types of foods are, where instead of, especially Southern Creole food being highlighted, French food is highlighted. But it's like, well, what's influenced by French food, like Creole food is, and what is eaten all around the world, fried chicken is, and that's like a Southern Black thing and you will never see it be elevated unless it's outside of itself. So there's just something
Mm.
about being Southern where everyone wants to eat your food. That's like most people. I don't think I've ever met anyone that hates fried chicken or that hates bread pudding or that hates like anything that comes from the South. They love it. They crave it to the point where it's like one of the few industries that is just everywhere in the world in different ways and copied and like regurgitated and reiterated. But the source is like never really, people don't want to talk about it. They're like ashamed of where it came from, or they
Well,
don't
there's
want to.
that. There's a little bit. There's a history of you know like slavery within that as well. So I mean that's a very taboo subject within, well, at least within the American culture. I feel like we've done a very good job of avoiding a real conversation about that for generations now. So is that sort of that's sort of, I imagine, threaded within the food culture itself, but also when I see like the painting that you're exhibiting, and it's a, you know, powerful black woman with these, you know, gender non-conforming presence holding the cock. This is a very, it can be a very aggressive image, but it's also extremely beautiful, like just a gorgeous image.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's it's so funny that me focusing on that's the core of my work, just Southern food. But like just saying that, there's so much cultural background that is intertwined with the idea and the history and the notion of like how prominent Southern food is everywhere. That all of these things, all of these conversations are just kind of brought up.
So you're in a residency now in France. Where are you in France? Where at?
I am in a really small town called Orcovo.
Okay.
So only 70 people that live here, and there's no restaurants or coffee shops. It's just out in the middle of nowhere.
And are you eating really good food? Because I think you have a chef or something there at the
Yeah,
residency, right?
very good food, but we don't, half the time we don't understand what we're eating. Every time she explains to us what we're eating, we're like, I wish we spoke more French, but this is amazing, no matter what it is.
That's wonderful. And are you going to have an opportunity to cook while you're there to share some of your food or no? It'd
I have
probably
been
be
asked.
impossible ingredients.
I've been asked by certain residents, like, hey, you should like ask the chef if like it would be okay for you to cook for us. I'm like, I'm not stepping in her
Nice.
kitchen. It's the main rule. That's the main Southern rule. You don't step in someone else's kitchen. And this isn't my house. I don't have the
Right.
manners. I have the manners. I can't do that. That's against Southern rules.
In terms of the themes of the Efimero show, Dia de los Muertos adjacent, how do you feel this particular piece fits in within in the themes of Efimero?
I think it fits in really well. At first, I was nervous because I didn't really have like the complete uh understanding of like, well, how what does this have to do with the theme of the show? Because I already had the idea before, but now I'm realizing it's because like at this point in my life, I've completely just like those gender norms, all those societal norms are dead to me. Like I'm just going to be myself, whether you like it or not. Hopefully you like it, but if not, I'll move on. Like it's like the death of needing acceptance from like kind of like white male society, especially. Like I'm just not going to conform. Like either I'm not going to change myself anymore. It's something that happened kind of unconsciously, but exactly as soon as I turned 30, it was like the day I turned 30, just like I don't have time for this anymore. I want to make a piece that like represents that I don't have time to care about whatever you say about me. Like I'm not going to try to make my voice higher for you or to wear certain things, or if I feel feminine today, I feel feminine today. If I feel more masculine the next day, I feel that. Like it's really not any of your business. And I wanted to make a piece that was about that. It was about the acceptance, the death and acceptance of a complete change, complete shift.
Well, it's a gorgeous piece. I'm excited to see it in person and get to experience it live as well.